Once again, everybody, I am Jim Graham, and I'll be welcoming Eryk Anders here on MMA UK to talk about his fight against Tim Williams. And Eryk, how you doing? Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay? I can see you. Can you hear me? I got you on the video. Can you hear me all right? You got the screen the right way. There we go. Now I hear audio. Can you hear me? I got you. I can hear you. All right, how you doing this afternoon, Eryk?
Man, I'm doing awesome. And yourself?
I'm doing all right. Everybody, once again, this is Eryk Anders, fresh off his victory here over Tim Williams last weekend at UFC Lincoln. And let's dive right into that fight, Eryk. After the fight, obviously, you were talking there with Paul Felder. You kind of said you had a slow first round. Is there anything in particular that you can attribute that to, or is it just 7 months not fighting?
Man, I'm not really sure. I think, I was supposed to walk out at 9 o'clock, and I was getting my hands wrapped at 8:30. So, I really didn't leave a whole lot of time to warm up. So, not really that I took that first round to get warmed up, but, kind of took that first round to get warmed up, to kind of get my rhythm going. And, I just felt a little off in that first round.
Now, of course, as this fight moved along to the second round, I don't know if you noticed it, but I noticed this. It seemed as though, sometimes after you're bouncing around a little bit, you see fighters kind of reset and do that little bit of shuffle. I noticed Tim reset probably about 5-6 times in that first minute and a half in the second round. And I knew that you moving forward in that first on that pressure, it seemed like it was starting to get to him very early in that second round. I didn't know if that was something you noticed as well.
Yeah, well, I just started to find my range and started to find home for my punches. Also threw a lot more strikes, a lot more volume in the second round. So, the second round was a much better round for me than the first round, but, sometimes, it just be like that.
And then obviously the third round, that's where you started to really find your range. He really was starting to slow down. He was definitely tired. He was desperately trying to get you to the ground. I think you sprawled on him probably, 3 or 4 times in that course of that round. His face was starting to get pretty bloody from your left hands. And then a situation happened where he was trying to get up. And, you timed it perfect, man, with that head kick.
Yeah, well, there were several times throughout the fight that, he would be on his back and get up with that technical stand-up. The only difference between those ones and the last one is, he would throw a kick, at my knee or something to get me to back up to make the space. At the end of that very last one there, and he just stood up right underneath me. So, it was easy to just take a step in and, throw that rear kick.
Now, were you worried at all that maybe you mistimed it and his hand was still on the ground or his knee is still on the ground and it might go as an illegal blow or something? Or do you think that you hit that clean?
No, it was clean the whole time because, I asked the ref, Blake Rice, what the rule was in Nebraska because some states have adopted the new rules, some states haven't. So, I asked him. He said as long as, 3 points of contact, he's up, Even if he'd had his, both sets of fingertips on the ground, he still would have been up. So, I think from the time I stepped in and threw the kick to the time it landed, it was a clean strike.
Now, of course, I think as I was talking and telling people about, obviously, you have a lot of finishes in your career. But where does this one rank in terms of your career finishes? Is this number one? That was pretty awesome.
Yeah, it'd be kind of hard to top that, man. There at the end of the fight, got me a little bonus, so it'd be hard to top that one.
Now, of course, I've seen, if you follow Eryk on his social media, at Eryk Anders on Twitter and Instagram, just his name, I saw people having a little fun with that, putting you in the Alabama kickers get up and have his head tee up. Was that your idea, or did a fan send that to you?
Nah, an account called Memes Mixed Martial Arts, I think, sent that to me. got it out there. So, hopefully the Tide doesn't need me much this year to kick field goals.
I thought it was pretty awesome. I think that's pretty awesome. But speaking of Alabama, of course, they have their first game this year, so against Louisville. So I'm sure you're super excited about 7 o'clock this evening, huh?
Josh, you funny. Yeah, man. I think that I think the Bama's, everybody's always worried about them reloading and stuff, but it's the same conversation every year. Coach Saban always finds a way to get the best 11 guys on the field and get victories. So, I couldn't tell you when the last time he lost a season opener. So, good luck to Louisville, but I think they're going to fall short.
Now, of course, there's been talk of who your next opponent is. We heard who you said after the fight there at UFC Lincoln, and now as though it looks like that might not happen. I'm talking about the man Elias Theodorou. So it doesn't look like that's going to materialize for you, at least in 2018.
Man, probably not. Old buddy got hurt, shoe face, but the UFC wanted a Brazilian to fill in for that spot, and I was suspended for 30 days. I think that's only like 29 days after my fight, so I'll still be suspended. So that's not even I couldn't have even took that fight. Definitely wanted to. And so they just rescheduled his fight. I doubt he fights anymore after December.
Now, of course, another one opponent that it seemed like you were talking about on Twitter is the YouTube sensation Logan Paul. I saw that you had
Man,
a
I was
comment for
going
him.
to go weight class he was fighting at. If he wants to fight a middleweight, I'll definitely do that. I know he made a couple million, boxing some other YouTube dudes. So, if I can get in there and make a few dollars, I'll absolutely do so.
Right. Now, what did you think about the whole thing with him and this? I believe it was KSI did a boxing match. What did you think about that?
Man, I don't know anything about any one of those guys. So, I saw the highlights. It's very amateurish. They look like amateur fighters. So, but he just got in there and started, throwing hands and flailing around and whatnot. So,
right.
Not very impressive on any one of their parts.
Did it surprise you that it got over 700,000 buys?
I mean, not really, man. I think YouTube, I know that they're super popular on YouTube and whatnot, so they got a large audience. I know the pay-per-view buy probably went like a $50 pay-per-view or anything like that. It's probably a little bit more affordable, a little cheaper, so they can sell more.
Now, okay, so obviously Logan Paul, joking aside, but no Elias Theodorou. Who is someone that you're looking for next, Eryk?
Man, it doesn't matter, man. I'm looking for someone in that 11 to 15 range. I think that's where I'm at with my skill set. 3-1 in the UFC, 2 of them finishes. So, and my one loss is a controversial decision. So, I think I'm up there in that 11 to 15 range right now.
Would you say this is just off the top of my head, just not like I have the rankings memorized, but would you say someone like a Thiago Santos or Israel Adesanya might be somebody that you would entertain?
Yeah, man, of course, man. I don't ever turn down fights. Whatever they put on the table is what I get, so what I take. So, and the same thing, if they come to me tomorrow with somebody, we'll say yes and we'll keep it moving.
Now, of course, I want to talk a little bit about your last fight because that's the last time we spoke before your fight with Machida. Just obviously we know the result, but how did that whole experience, obviously being in the main event, fighting in Brazil, taking on someone of that caliber in Machida, what was that whole experience like for you?
Man, it was pretty awesome. I didn't approach that fight any different than I do any other fight. So, I didn't stress about necessarily who my opponent was or anything like that. And, just took it a day at a time. That, really put together, a good game plan, didn't implement it as well as I would have liked, but, it'd be like that sometimes. What I'll do.
Right. Now, obviously the result wasn't what you wanted. You wanted to win. Obviously, you now had some months to digest it. What did you think about the decision? Did you feel like you fought good enough to win that night in February?
Man, I do. I feel like even if you look at his demeanor after the fight, I think that he thinks that I won as well. I think I got rounds 2, 3, and 4. He for sure got 1, and most likely 5. So, that's how I see the fight. And it's kind of how I felt, after the fight that night as well.
Do you think as though, and I saw this, I think, in a couple other fights, do you think maybe some of the Brazilians got kind of like a hometown advantage? Because there were a couple fights that were close that seem to go to Brazilians that maybe shouldn't have?
I don't know, man. It's kind of like home field advantage, man. It is what it is. I don't know about anybody else, but there were times during that fight where I could have finished the fight and took the judges out of the equation altogether, but just didn't. So I know there were some more controversial decisions, but if you leave it to the judge, then you could be on the wrong end.
Now, of course, looking like we just had the summer starting to wind down. Obviously, we're Labor Day weekend. I see you got one of your kids there in the car with you. So how was the summer there with your family and with your kids?
Oh, it was good, man. They pretty much train when I train, which is all day. So really try to wear them out in the gym. We got a hill that we run. Let them burn off some energy throughout the day instead of like being trapped in the house or anything like that. So kind of keeps them mellowed out so they don't not too loud around the house.
Right, I hear you. Now, of course, your last fight was in Lincoln, Nebraska. That's the home of Nebraska football. Obviously, maybe they're starting to turn things around. But what would it be like actually to have a fight for you at your alma mater at University of Alabama? How come they can't bring it to Tuscaloosa?
Well, I don't think there's a reason they can't. The very first few UFCs were in Alabama, so hopefully, I get enough, star power, if you will. I can definitely, that's something I definitely want to do is bring them to, somewhere in Alabama, Birmingham or Tuscaloosa probably makes the most sense sometime in 2019.
Because I know there's not just you there. I know Walt Harris, I believe, is from Alabama as well, and I think there's a couple other fighters from kind of that region, the Mississippi. I think Jason Knight from pretty close to there. So I mean, there definitely would be a lot of fighters to sell the house besides yourself.
Yeah, man, there's a lot of good fighters from the South. OSP, Jason Knight, Ben Davis, who's fighting here next week. He's fighting Zabit. I'm not even gonna try to pronounce his last name. Yeah, man, there's quite a few quality fighters down here in the South.
Now, we had a question earlier that was obviously next weekend's big main event in the welterweight division, Darren Till against Tyron Woodley. How did you? We had a question. How did you think that one was going to play out? Oh, did you hear me? Did I lose you? I was asking who you thought was going to win between Darren Till and Tyron Woodley.
Yeah, I think
it froze for a second.
Good.
Woodley?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Woodley. I think he's gonna fight the way he usually fights, explode forward, probably take Darren Till down because he presses forward so much. So, very interesting fight. Darren Till is so long, but I think there's two that cover ground and distance as well, and as fast as Woodley does.
Before we let you go, Eryk, is there anyone you would like to give a shout out to? Any sponsors you want to plug or anything before we let you go?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I appreciate Vitamin Energy, Infinite CBD for rocking heavy with me. All the people at SVG, family and friends, everybody what's up with me.
All right, Eryk, thanks for joining me again. He is Eryk Anders. You can follow him on social media, Twitter, Instagram. It's just his name, at Eryk Anders. And thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule. I really appreciate you talking to me here a few minutes.
I appreciate you having me, man. Anytime.
All right, once again, Eryk Anders right here on MMA UK. Thanks, everybody, and goodbye.